Hi, I'm Maria Theoharis, or Bello Sews on social media. Welcome to Sew Organised Style Podcast. Stay listening. On Sew Organised Style Podcast, I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this podcast and pay respects to the elders past and present. Thanks for joining us on Sew Organised Style Podcast. Kate Ward of Zen Stitching is creating the next Making Zen Online Retreat. This online retreat provides an online workshop with over 20 textile artists from across the globe. And the week that the Making Zen Online Retreat is run for free on each day when the videos are released. This year, Making Zen is being run from the 15th to the 19th of May, and you can register at makingzen.com. Another aspect of Making Zen that has changed is that you can purchase the retreat at any time for $59. Kate has simplified Making Zen so there's no pressure, and you can simply enjoy accessing each workshop from all the highly talented and trained textile artists during that week. Kate, thank you for inviting me into your home today so that we can talk about what's happening with the Making Zen Online Retreat this year.
It's always a pleasure. I love catching up with you.
Kate, it's been really good to be part of helping make sure that people understand that Making Zen Online Retreat is on again this year, because there's been so many people who have given their time as a textile artist to the rest of us who want to be able to do something but just can't get past that procrastination part of, what do I do? I would like to use this fabric or thread, or, nature is inspiring me. So it's really good that you've been able to provide us with the Making Zen Online Retreat with all of the artists so that we can get past that inertia or not being able to do something and actually get our hands and minds a little bit busy.
Yeah, and that's what is so great about the retreat, because there are so many different artists with so many different techniques that you can either pick something up that's totally new, you can do a bit more of a deep dive if you've been interested in a particular technique, but you're not too sure where to start. And then there are some which you may not even be interested in, but follow along anyway, because they're quite often the ones where you're going to have some really interesting aha moments and sometimes go down a real rabbit hole of delight. There's so many different ways of learning and different techniques, I guess, that are always explored. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone in them.
And just remembering back to some of the first sessions that were run at Making Zen, they really made you focus on what's happening in your mind and then being creative with whatever's in that mind space that you're in.
And that's something that I think is really important from my own aesthetic. And also I'm finding the more that I do this, how important it is for others to be able to find that quiet space and just find time to slow down and a little bit of quiet time to tap into the creative side of ourselves. Quite often we're so busy rushing around that our logical brain has control over everything. So this retreat is a really nice way to let the brain work through its intuition and have a play, which I think is ultimately what this is all about. It's playing, having fun, and it's that enjoyment that's really going to take you that next step to what you want to create.
I know that listeners are going to really enjoy the textile artists who will talk about what they're presenting at Making Zen, because they do follow on from that thought of playing with creating, even just using a simple running stitch to come up with different ideas, different creative outlets, I suppose. So you don't have to be educated in embroidery. It can just be as simple as using a running stitch.
Yeah, totally. And that's what makes many of these artists so wonderful as well. They're all wonderful. Some of them are techniques that we might be familiar with, but they look at them in such a way we can't help but take that next creative step with them. So like you say, things like the running stitch suddenly become exciting again rather than something mundane that you only do because you have to. So that's why this is really fun, because it's all textile artists taking textile techniques to the next level. And I think that's where the excitement really does begin, because they're pushing boundaries, sometimes our comfort levels on what we're used to creating, and then how you can take it that little bit further to create something really exciting and inspiring.
What people will find is that these textile artists are very well trained in their area of expertise, but they make it so simple just to get started and be creative.
Yeah, that's the sign of a master, really, isn't it? To be able to take something that sometimes is complicated and make it so simple. And that's what's great too, you know. There's nothing worse than having all these barriers up to kind of like prevent you from learning or doing something new. So if there's someone there who can guide you through the process and make it really easy and encouraging, and you want to do it, then I think it's brilliant.
And you've also simplified Making Zen again this year, haven't you?
Yes, every year it simplifies a little bit more. So this year, it's a lot of it is the same. We've got a lot of fabulous textile artists from all over the world, and they're teaching us lots of amazing things. But one thing that has been simplified through the process is this time round, the price is consistent before and during the event. So this time it's $59 whether you sign up at any stage of the process. But again, one of the things that is also consistent is that at the end of the event, all of these amazing artists are no longer available. So if it's something you want to keep, I'd recommend purchasing it whilst you can.
Part of the advantage of going to the Making Zen online retreat is having all of those textile artists available to you after that week, because it's a lot to process. And there's no reason why you can't just go back and look at one or two every so often when you really feel like you need a break, or you would like to be inspired, or even just reminded of what you looked at earlier.
I think that's a really good point, because there is a lot in a short amount of time. And I know, myself included, sometimes it's really difficult to have a long stretch of time to be creative. But there's always a spare 10 minutes in our day that we can find. And so that's where having access to the All Access Pass is fabulous, because you can dip in and dip out, and having that consistency of doing 10 minutes a day, following along to one of the different artists in their workshop. It's just going to build on your repertoire slowly and consistently. And therein, you're developing your creative muscles. So you'll probably start to try and find more time rather than 15 minutes in a day to start creating. Or what kind of happens with me is I'll put aside 15 minutes, and then that time stretches to half an hour. And then if I'm really lucky, it goes even longer. But it's a really nice entryway into creating, is having that reference there, that's for sure.
And then the other part of it is being part of the Facebook group too, because after joining Making Zen, since you've started it, the level of creativity from the people who have taken part and stay, within that group, it continues every day. There's always something more that people are showing or exploring or inspiring others with.
Yeah, isn't that fabulous? And I just love that. And that's where it's taking some of these ideas and pushing them, or exploring them further, or experimenting to see what happens if you take a couple of the different ideas the artists have demonstrated in the workshop and combining them together. And the community is fabulous. It's so full of so many lovely people, and everyone is so encouraging and so inspiring. It's just kind of got a momentum of its own. So it keeps going once the retreat finishes. And yeah, even now people are sharing what they're creating. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, they keep coming up on my Facebook feed. It's really lovely.
And everyone is so lovely. So everyone always shares lovely comments, and it really is such a wonderful community of like-minded people.
Out of the wonderful choice that we have this time around, would you like to talk a little bit more about?
Oh, well, Maria, that's really tricky to try and choose 3 or so artists because I do think they're really wonderful. I know you have the great fortune of chatting with some of them on the podcast, so I can't wait to hear your conversations with them. But some people who I'm super excited to have joining us this time round is Pippa Haynes, and she's from the UK, and she makes these delightful embroideries that are 3-dimensional, and they're inspired by nature. I'm really looking forward to seeing what she shares with us because, of course, at this point in time, they're all secret. Pippa's work, I think, is going to complement very nicely Meredith Woolnough's work. So Meredith is joining us again. She's doing something a little bit different this time round, so I'm not going to spill the beans. What she will do will complement quite nicely with Pippa Haynes. That's one I'm really looking forward to seeing. Another artist that I'm really excited to share with you is Susie Banks-Baum. And she is going to be an amazing artist to have as part of the retreat. And she's going to start us off because she is very much about showing up in a daily way. So she's going to really talk through some ways that we can encourage our creativity, particularly through stitching and creating a story cloth. She's going to be wonderful just to kind of get that incentive and those creative juices flowing for creating a daily practice, because I think that's incredibly important. Another artist who's joining us again is Vania, and Vania does the wardrobe school, and she was in the first of the retreats as well. Vania is wonderful. She's based just outside of New York City, and she's really interested in taking clothing and upcycling it. She's done all sorts of wonderful things like taking men's shirts and turning them into pretty women's blouses, doing in machine embroidery on top, and a whole lot of different things. So she has quite a contemporary look with how she likes to upcycle clothes. So I'm super excited to have her back again, just to kind of take a little bit of the zero waste and the Zen living aspects as well, and bringing those into the Making Zen Online Retreat. We have another artist who is from just on the other side of the pond, New Zealand. And Victoria is a fabulous artist who likes to focus on eco-printing. So she's a really good natural dyer. And she's going to be showing us how to do eco-printing on socks. I can't wait for this workshop. It's super fun. You end up with a pair of socks that looks like it's got the flowers printed very nicely on it. So I can't wait to having a go at doing this myself. So she's going to be super fun. So that's Victoria, and she's known as La Creative Mama on the socials. So people may be familiar with her and her work. And another artist who I'm super excited to have joining us is Blair. So Blair is from Wisecraft Handmade, and she specializes in patchwork quilts. She's just recently done a deep dive into an embroidery technique called chicken scratch embroidery. It's embroidery that's based or uses gingham fabric as its base. She got inspired because she found a whole load of different samples in thrift stores around. And so she looked at them, deconstructed them, and then has reconstructed them and is showing people how to do this chicken scratch embroidery. So I think that's going to be a super fun technique and class to follow along with as well.
Fashion-wise, gingham has been everywhere. So
is that so?
I know. And just picking out, the fact that you've got Blair who's deconstructing or using chicken scratch with gingham, I think that's going to be quite fun.
Even now I'm just thinking, if Vania shows us how to upcycle something, and it could be a gingham top, for example, and then you could come back in and do some chicken scratch embroidery on top. So all these things are starting to come together already.
I know. That's really great. I know that there is going to be a wonderful sense of play throughout Making Zen, but that's all part of understanding, being creative, and knowing that that gives you some sort of pleasure in your life. And it's only something small, but it really does make a difference in the day.
Oh my goodness, does it ever? It's one of those things. And I think for a lot of us, it quite often will get put to the bottom of the to-do list.
Yeah.
I think it is really important to put aside a little bit of time for ourselves to be creative, because like you say, it brings so much pleasure. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because it is bringing us so much pleasure. There's so many other positive therapeutic benefits as well. I guess that's where the Zen side of it comes into it, because you're slowing down and you're focusing and you're relaxing, hopefully. And then you have that sense of achievement when you've learnt a new thing or made a new thing. So it is so beneficial. And yeah, it's just so much fun.
I'm really looking forward to Making Zen. This year it's on from the 15th to the 19th of May.
One of the other things that I forgot to mention is when you do buy the All Access Pass, not only do you have lifetime access to all of the workshops that the artists are providing, a lot of the artists are also providing additional bonus workshops too. So you really are getting a plethora of different workshop styles and techniques. It will keep you busy for quite some time, all the different workshops that you can do a deep dive into.
That's something to really look forward to when we actually get started with Making Zen, is just seeing all of the other resources and workshops that we can get involved with.
Most of the artists do have that training and quite often have worked in industry and then decided that they wanted to follow their own creative paths and change tack and do other things. And that's what makes it so interesting, I think, because they do have that knowledge from a creative but also industry sense, two different angles.
Yeah. So we are getting textile artists this time and in previous times who are knowledgeable in their field, have been trained at a tertiary level and have probably worked in industry, and they've then gone, hang on a second, I want to make sure that I can take elements of this that bring me joy that I can then pass on to people. And I think that's one of the key things that I love about Making Zen, is that you're bringing them all together for us. And luckily we're, twice a year, and we've got access to them after that week. So it's wonderful, Kate.
Like you say, it's all about community. It's about bringing people together and sharing our skills and techniques with everyone. And quite often we as teachers learn just as much through engaging with others as well. Like, it either prompts new ideas or there's a different way of thinking about things. So it really is something that everyone enjoys.
Kate, thank you so much for taking us through what we're about to experience with the Making Zen Online Retreat in May. You brought together so many lovely and talented textile artists that we can only benefit from once we're there in May.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, Maria. I'm thrilled to be able to be facilitating this, because I really do feel like it's such a wonderful opportunity to bring these artists together and bring the community together, and for us all to have such a wonderful time. It gives me goosebumps when I can be able to be part of such an amazing thing. It really does.
And thank you for letting me bring you onto the podcast to let people know about it. I love catching up with you.
Yeah, likewise, Maria. I love it too.
Thank you. This episode of Soul Organised Style Podcast was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, with permission of Kate for the Making Zen Online Retreat, sound by bensound.com. Making Zen Online Retreat is coming up on the 15th to the 19th of May, and you can register on the website at makingzen.com. You can subscribe to Soul Organised Style Podcast, spelled with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to the previous Making Zen Textile Artists podcast so that you can get a feel for the depth of textile art workshops that the Making Zen Online Retreat provides the sewing community. I hope you can help us with the production of this podcast through our Patreon account. We look forward to seeing you at Making Zen in May. Stay safe, everyone.